Hello, one and all, and welcome to the Media Beat, episode 85 with Maureen and Claire. And I always look forward to the Media Beat, as you do, I'm sure. But particularly today is going to be fantastic because the deep dive is on Spotify, which is a service not only where you can find the Media Beat and other great podcasts, but I love it. I've always loved it. And when I dived into the world of music streaming, I thought this is the future. I was quite an early adopter as well. So we are going to do a deep dive on that. And I'm looking forward to it immensely because I'll learn something about the origins of it and maybe where it's going from a creative and business perspective. So we'll be talking about Comcast and ITV, Paramount Sports rights, Google Gemini, of course, the iPhone SoC, so stay tuned for that. TikTok takes over the world and producers unite. We have a packed show. So without further ado, let's get on to the deep dive. So I think it's you starting, Claire, on history, and then we'll move over to the, maybe the business and the future with Maureen. So, Claire, this is it. No pressure, but these have become legendary, your stories of how tech has evolved. But yeah, give us a brief overview of the history of Spotify, Claire.
The history of Spotify is, I want to start actually with a little bit of going back into the history books of recorded music industry. I mean, we all know it started with big LPs and then it moved into CDs and various other things. But what we, I guess, know, but perhaps have forgotten a little bit, is what happened to the global music industry between 2000 and 2010. And I think it's worth going back to that before we talk about Spotify. In 2000, the global recorded music revenues were about $40 billion globally. In 2010, they were down to $16 million globally. That's like, can you see the incredible drop? And we may or may not remember what caused this, but some of us still remember going to Napster to illegally download music files. And yes, that's what happened. Piracy basically decimated the music industry, which was reliant mostly on physical sales, CDs, etc. Completely killed it to a point that seems incredible when you think about it now. And that's the context in which Spotify is born. And just spoiler alert, where we are today is we're back to about 30 billion. So we're not even back to the 2000 level in terms of global revenues. But of course, we're in a very different situation where the cost of product is much lower because we don't have to produce, CDs and distribute them. And so it's a very, very different industry. And of these $30 billion, 70% is music streaming. So the industry, it's been 25 years and a lot of things have changed in these 25 years, but the industry is completely reset around streaming after almost collapsing due to piracy in a way that didn't really happen in other parts of the media landscape. So that's interesting to remember. Now, in 2006, we are close to the absolute bottom of the industry in terms of piracy. And this is when Spotify appears. And it appears in Sweden in April 2006. And it was created by Daniel Ek and Martin Lauritsen. Now, we mostly talk about Daniel Ek. He's the figurehead of Spotify. And I will tell a little bit about Daniel Ek's sort of quite extraordinary life before Spotify. But Martin Lauritsen is also a very important part of the story and still remains on the board today. Now, but let's talk about Daniel Ek. He was born in 1983, so I'll let you calculate how much younger he is than you, people who listen. And he started building a website when he was 14. And he applied for a job at Google at 16, and they didn't take him, but started building his own businesses and sold his first online advertising firm called Advertigo to Trade Doubler for a lot of money. And so he was an entrepreneur. And that's when he decided, in 1983, he was 23 years old and he decided to create Spotify. And really the concept about Spotify was to create a legal on-demand streaming service. The very early stories of Spotify is very much about intense negotiations and deals with the labels. It was all about getting the formal deals with the labels. They were in a good position because the labels were really, really struggling. Think about 60% of your revenues disappearing sort of overnight. But still, there was a lot of disagreement amongst the major labels as to how to respond to piracy, and Spotify had to make some pretty big compromises at the beginning to get the deals in. But they did do the deal. And then they became very, very, very big very quickly. One thing that people forget about Spotify as well is that it pioneered the freemium model. And if you remember the very early days of Spotify, you could listen to it on your computer and you'd get ads, or you could get the app and pay and not get the ads. And that seems completely obvious now. And Netflix is reinventing it. But Spotify was there first. They went public. They did an IPO in April 2018. Although the two founders still to this day control a very significant share of voting rights, and they set it up in that way. So even though it's traded publicly, the control is very much still in the hands of the two founders. There were some interesting controversies which have been somewhat forgotten. In 2014, Taylor Swift, do you remember that? Taylor Swift removed her catalog from Spotify. This was a very big moment in the Tavernier household. People were crying, I think it's fair to say. And then there were intense negotiations. We really consolidated the sort of star power, and the fact that some artists would have a different deal. She ended up getting a different deal from Spotify because it was so important to Spotify to have her back on. So she came back, but it was 4 years later that she came back. Spotify today, before I hand over to Maureen for the future, for Spotify is the leading global music streaming platform. It has about 30% of the global streaming market. It's got about 40% in Europe. It's slightly smaller in the US, where it's only 30%, but it's still the leader, followed by Apple Music and Amazon Music. It's obviously invested enormously in podcasts, which is growing super fast. And it's also investing a lot in advertising revenues, and it's really trying to maximize its advertising revenue, although that still remains small compared to the subscription revenues, which remain the center of their model. It has turned a profit for the first time in 2024, and it's generally considered to be doing very well, I think. But I am going to hand over to Maureen to tell me how it really is. But yes, this was the short history of Spotify, the little green bowl that most people have on their phone somewhere.
And that's true. Claire, that was a nice one of your classic history telling situations. So I'm not going to call it storytelling; it's a situation. So I think your question to me is, what exactly is Spotify becoming and turning into? And it's amazingly short history that it has had. I mean, it's almost 2 decades old, isn't it, Claire? So, I mean, it's staggering that they've done so much in such a short period of time, and against a rather turbulent and disruptive music industry. So I actually happened, perchance, to listen to an interview that the CFO, Christian Luigia, I'm probably butchering his surname, but that he gave at the recent Morgan Stanley conference. So I've decided to actually steal a couple of his strategic points, and I'll relay those. And there were 3 probably major points I thought that would be worth sort of unpacking, Claire, so that we can just really see strategically where Spotify is going. And what I thought was really interesting was something you just said, that Spotify is no longer a simple playlist app. It really is developing into a media operating system, and as I say, I'm going to go through 3 things which I thought were really quite important. One is the revenue model, and you sort of touched on this, Claire, but it really is now beyond music and beyond podcasts. And it's really interesting the way Christian was describing this. And he was saying that what they're going after and what they're turning into is a multi-vertical user ecosystem. And what he meant by that was we engage with people who love music and love podcasts and love audiobooks. And that's now becoming the engine of their business. And he says, and he's sharing really interesting metrics to support this, but he says when someone adds a podcast or an audiobook on top of the music, their total listening time now rises significantly, and it doesn't cannibalize their base business. It stacks onto multi-layered their business. They're now seeing less churn. And of course, as we all know, they are probably the golden child of the subscription model, where their churn is already very, very low. They're proving that people are staying longer and ultimately spending more. So it's absolutely fantastic to see, them really going after a different type of audience. They are, though, and as we know, and as you just touched on, Claire, as well, they are masters. They have held the master classes of basically moving from freemium to premium. And it's amazing that Spotify, actually, their paying subscribers starts on free. 60% of Spotify's paying customer, started on free. And that funnel, free to premium, is still one of the most powerful growth mechanics. And I think the growth is coming from the broader the surface area of the free content, the more people will move up the value chain. And then, of course, enabling that is got to be AI. So we all know that they've always been an algorithm first company, even in the early days. But what's happening now, I think, is that shift from recommendation to generation. So they're using AI not to replace artists, which we will love to hear that, but to supercharge discovery, creation, and the most important thing, personalization. And that is embodied, as we all know, we've probably all got this on our apps, the AI DJ. And although the AI DJ is just the beginning, they're really heading towards personalized audio channels, always on feeds that mix probably music, commentary, podcast clips, maybe even news soon. And so I think this is probably turning out to be the reinvention of the radio. Now, I may have hijacked that phrase from you, Claire, from a previous episode, but I don't know, except every person probably gets their own station. And I think that's really going to be quite smart. But I think what is also interesting, what they're doing, and they've already laid the foundations here, is the creator tools. So Spotify wants to become TikTok of audio. They want the easy creation, easy editing, and the algorithm, or the algorithmic, I should say, distribution. Imagining this show. Okay, so we're recording a segment and having Spotify auto clean it, clip it, score it, title it, translate it, and publish it. Sorry, Oliver, you've lost your job.
Damn. I'm out of here.
And that's done.
I would never do that to you, Oliver.
But we would never do that, because
Good. We have this on tape.
We need your cultural, we need your talent, we need your perfect editorial guidance. So that would never happen, particularly on the Media Beat. So anyway,
excellent.
But it is,
we have that recorded.
But it is staggering. So then if I fast forward, this is my third and last, and I'll be very quick, last comment I want to make, but financially, I mean, in the economics, they're much more disciplined. They're much more predictable. And Claire, you recall, we probably covered this in our podcast way back in 2022. But the long-term strategy that they brought to market was, we want to achieve 1 billion users. We want 35-40% gross margins, and we want 10 to 20% EBIT margin. And since that day, Spotify now has achieved 300 million users, and around 100 million are new subscribers. Gross margins are already above 30%. Operating profit, in technical terms, but as Claire said, they've only just sort of broken even, is what we say is scaling accordingly. But what's really fascinating is, and we've all experienced this, is on pricing. So Spotify raised prices in more than 150 countries recently, and guess what? Churn barely moved. So that's becoming the recurring story, and something that strategically they're building on. Churn at Spotify, as we know, was low compared to other businesses within the subscription industries. And even the major global price hikes just haven't budged it. So it's fascinating to see that. But Claire, as you said also, their foray into advertising, which is probably undergoing its biggest transition since Spotify launched ads. I think are really at early stages because they've still got the old school direct sales to programmatic. And I think programmatic is definitely being hit out of the arena, but fortunately or unfortunately, direct sales just is dropping more steeply. So, but I think we're going to see a transition and an inflection point in 2026, and I think the CFO also alluded to that. So, I mean, overall, what does this all point to? I think the way we are now going to start talking about Spotify is it's building a multi-purpose, multi-vertical hybrid monetization ecosystem that blends subscriptions, ads, marketplace, and AI-driven personalization, and particularly AI-driven personalization in a world where AI content or content will become cheaper to produce and possibly even move into a more ambient or functional music where Spotify probably does not need to pay those significant margins back to the labels. This is a really interesting proposition, I think. So anyway, I don't think Spotify wants to look like, and it won't look like Netflix. It will not look like radio. It will not look like TikTok. But what it will look like is something between all of them. And I think that's a really important distinction. I think they're really putting their stall out. And then the last statistic, which I found staggering. I didn't calculate it myself, but Christian did allude to this. Actually mentioned it. That did you all know that only 3% of the world currently pays for Spotify? And if that number even move towards 10% over time, that is staggering. And if it does move across multiple verticals like personalized content and personalized ads, oh my God, I am long on this stock. And I would definitely be piling in and buying this because 3% to 10%. And we know that their funnel is absolutely magical, where they move free to premium. So that's my sort of little penny's worth of strategic insight and financial insight. But I think Christian also is an amazing executive. I really did enjoy the way he spoke numbers and metrics. He's so immersed in this business, and strategically he spoke great sense. So I am so long on Spotify. I think it's an amazing company.
I'm going to pick up just on one thing before we move on to our other topics, which I think is really important and for me a big reason of their success. I think more than any other platforms, except perhaps YouTube, Spotify is incredibly user-centric. And by being incredibly user-centric, they have actually created enormous barriers to exit. And what I mean by this is, what does the user want? The user wants playlist. We all know this. We were doing mixtapes in the 80s. Come on, let's be honest. That's how people listen to music. Let me help you create really targeted playlists and make them even better. And so you'll never want to go, because actually that is one of the big barriers to exit. Imagine leaving Spotify and losing all your playlists. What do you want? You want to build playlists with somebody else because that's more fun. Okay, we'll give you that. What else do you want? I want to play music, but I want other people to be able to add to my playlist as it plays. Let's create that, because that's a very natural, behavior that we want to facilitate. What do I want? I want my kids are using my Spotify. It's really annoying. It's messing up my stats. Okay, we'll create a family subscription. That's fantastic. I don't care if more than one person uses your account, but because you will feel better having several accounts, let me ask you to pay a bit more money to have a family subscription. And I don't care where they are in the world, by the way. I'm not going to monitor their IP address because you're paying me a fortune to get this family subscription. So I think they're incredible focus on, and we've talked about last time, we talked about uncertification of experience, and we are seeing this on many platforms, but not on Spotify at the moment. It remains a very, very user-centric platform, and I think that is something that is that really is in the credo of the company. And as long as they stay true to this, I think they will be in a good place. So yes, I'm also long on Spotify.
And I want to congratulate you, Claire, for getting that funny word in again, which is, I don't
I'll
know
just
what it
keep
is.
saying, I'm just going to use
Any,
it every time
any,
now.
is it any shitification? Is that what it is? What is it?
And shitification. I think we should maybe, that's going to be our word of the year. I really like it. Anyway, moving on.
And we haven't mentioned, which I'm surprised, given that we're only 3 weeks away, wrap up. We have not mentioned wrap up.
Oh yeah, Wrap Up was a
yeah.
brilliant tool. Everybody's sharing it. It's a massive, and yeah, we will be sharing our Wrap Up, obviously.
And that was a new word, wasn't it?
and
Everyone was going, have you done your wrap up? Have you seen your wrap up?
I
Hey,
know.
what was your wrap up like? Oh, my wrap up was brilliant. Spotify's absolutely awesome. I've loved it since I started. It was a bit of a leap for old folk like me to say, oh my God, I'm basically throwing away all my CDs. That felt really weird. But once you got around that, and it's great that the kids, you'll know this, Claire, you've got about 700 children. But they don't know that Fontaine's DC and Blondie and Lady Gaga and Led Zeppelin and Jimi Hendrix and are from different eras. They just see good music.
No, that's just the one thing. And then we didn't talk about this, but Spotify's done a lot to, for old artists. And one of the reasons why people are now buying music catalogs for millions and millions of dollars is partly, hundreds of millions of dollars, is partly because of the Spotify effect. Although TikTok's also been a big part of this. So yeah, we're all happy on Spotify. And it's a European success story as well, which is always nice.
Yeah, it sort of proved that the 80s music is the best. Anyway, let's move on quickly. That was absolutely superb. I love Spotify. I love the light you shone on it and the wisdom that you put on Spotify from a business and creative perspective. Marvellous work, may I say, Maureen and Claire. A classic deep dive that is going to be played for years to come. People will discover that in decades' time on Spotify, probably. Let's move on. And of course, after the deep dive comes In the News. And first up, we have Maureen, and Maureen has looks like she's just come from the hairdresser. She looks absolutely magnificent today and ready for television. She looks superb, as you can see, hopefully, if we get this video edited properly. And she's outside a large, well-known media corporation with a massive media story from here in the UK. No, it's not the BBC, thank the Lord. It is Comcast and ITV. You're outside Comcast mansions, Maureen, and you have that story.
I do indeed. All right. So the big story is, of course, as we know, Comcast is exploring a deal to buy ITV's media and entertainment arm. Right. So it's the broadcast bit and it's ITVX. It's not ITV Studios. But the question on everyone's minds is why? What's the strategic logic here? Well, I tell you why. Comcast has got bags of cash. Okay, sitting in its banks and sitting on its balance sheet. That's the reason why. So there are two things actually: bags of cash, and ITV is what I'm going to call in our trade, in the M&A trade, a classic Comcast acquisition. It truly is. Now let's go to the cash bit. They've got nearly $5 billion. This is last quarter, which is about 45% year on year. That they've got to do something with it. They have actually given some money back to shareholders, and it was around about 12% dividends and buybacks. But there's still a whole ton of cash left. So that's the reason why. Okay, but I'll go to the second point. And this is definitely a Comcast style acquisition. It's a clean bolt on. It strengthens what they already own in the UK through Sky. It delivers three things: scale in broadcast and streaming. It delivers a much more powerful advertising and data machine. It's also got the ITVX audience that gives Comcast a premium video marketplace. And it also strengthens their streaming and aggregation position, which they do need. Again, I'm going to point to ITVX, which has solid engagement, and Sky is really betting big on aggregation because it's got Sky Glass, I should say, and Sky Stream Glass. It's really difficult to say that. Sky's got grass and they've got Steam as well. So Glass and Stream, and of course now TV. So it all makes sense. This should be taught in the finance segment of an MBA. It's a brilliant deal. It makes strategic sense. They don't get embroiled in the content side around studios where content inflation is just staggering, and it's really tricky to really figure out what content to buy. So all in all, bags of cash, and they've got an existing property in Sky sitting here in the UK. Buying ITV makes such great strategic sense, and I'm going to leave it there.
Yes, and I completely 100% agree with you, Maureen, but it's really interesting that you didn't say the big thing that any other time in history would have been on everybody's lips, which is market dominance. In, even 2
I knew
years
you would.
ago.
I knew you would.
Yeah. Even 2 years ago, even a year ago, this could not even have been considered, because there's a real question about market dominance, specifically around the ad selling, which, because obviously if you're talking about the audience with the BBC and Channel 4, you'd probably be okay. But advertising and some rights, ITV and Sky jointly would be in a very dominant position. The other area is news provision, obviously, because ITV's got ITN and Sky has Sky News. Now, interestingly, most of the commentary, apart from yours, Maureen, has been exactly what you've said. This makes sense. We should do it. We need more scale. These people are really struggling, and we should do it. And the CMA will be looking at the deal and assessing it, and may say no, which almost would be guaranteed to have said no in the past. But actually now I think has a very good chance of going up for it and saying yes. And it's interesting to go back to a couple of years ago when the same thing almost happened in France. You'll remember M6 and TF1 tried to merge, and their competition authority said, no, we can't have that. And the response from TF1 and M6 was, but you're talking about the wrong market. You're talking about the broadcast market. This market doesn't exist anymore. And in the wider, video advertising market, we are tiny, 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 and we absolutely need the scale. And I think if TF1 and M6 tried again, which there are rumors that they will, it would be a slightly different position. And I suspect this deal will come through. And I wonder, once it does come through, if a closer link up between the BBC and Channel 4 would be mooted. And maybe when we do our predictions episode later on, we should talk about this. But anyway, completely agree with you about the financial and strategic alignment. And I suspect, there's a lot of energy behind this still going through, but it will still be scrutinized.
I agree with you, and the regulatory piece, is a serious one. So I wasn't going to be flippant on the regulatory side at all. But I am going to put my hand up, and I will predict this will go through. I just feel as if the Sky folks and the Comcast folks are damn smart people, and they're already writing and rewriting what the market looks like and what the market definition should be, and that's all the smart lawyers over there as well, and that will go through. I think that will definitely go through.
Great. That's got everything. It's got predictions. Gosh, of course, we're nearly entering December as well. So we are predictions episode soon. And we can look back at what we said last year as well.
Yes,
if it was good. Otherwise, we'll just ignore. We'll just pretend we never said that. Great. Lovely analysis. Thank you so much. Moving on about deals, Paramount and sports rights. Claire, you have that story.
Yes, Paramount has won the largest packages of UEFA Champions League broadcasting rights for 2027 to 2031. Wow, we're in the 30s now. That's crazy. In the UK and Germany. And they're taking over from TNT Sports and DAZN. Still can't pronounce it. This is a new player basically entering the sports rights world, and that's what people are surprised about. It's a new player, but it's not Netflix or Amazon or indeed Apple. It's a completely new player coming in for a very large deal, $1 billion. Now, we know Paramount has money because they've just been acquired by the Ellison, who has a lot of money. And it makes complete sense for them to invest in sports. This is something that they've been very vocal that they're interested in. But it means that there is more and more fragmentation in football rights across Europe, which means that for viewers, they're going to have to subscribe to more and more different services in order to watch the games that they want to watch. although it also, interestingly, I think, strengthens Sky's position as an aggregator of a lot of these places. Also, an interesting thing to remind is Paramount is also, or the new Paramount is also bidding for WBD. You remember we talked about this, and they're not bidding for just the streaming assets. They are bidding for the whole thing. And now WBD includes TNT Sports, for instance. So this is another consolidation, or an attempt from Paramount, quite an aggressive attempt at consolidating some sports rights and sports broadcasting. So it will be interesting to see what happens. I think in the short term, probably not great news for football fans in the UK and Germany, because they're going to have to pay extra money to see the same games. But long term, perhaps a new large-scale player emerging, not necessarily from where we expected it to emerge from in the sports market. And that's me.
Oh, Champions League football last night. We were flipping between service providers, just thinking how much money this is costing me. Anyway, the result wasn't great either. Anyway, never mind. It's not a football podcast. No one cares about football. Let's move on. Thank you. Thank you for that, Claire. That's, a story that'll run and run. And finally, on News Round, back to Maureen and Google Gemini launch. So, what's the story?
Yeah, so Google has just launched Gemini 3, and this is much bigger. This is a much bigger moment than any other, just releasing any other sort of AI model. We may all recall Gemini actually started life as Bard, and that was a rather embarrassing and slightly awkward launch. It was an early chatbot before DeepMind took over the reins from Google and said, hey, give it to us. And they rebuilt Gemini into a fully functional, multimodal family of models last year. Brilliant. And since then, I think Google has been trying to sort of reposition Gemini now as its answer to OpenAI. So not just text generation, but reasoning across images, video, audio, and code. And I think it's absolutely amazing. But what we'll see with Gemini 3 is it's now baked in directly into Google search. So no separate app, no friction. Second, the model itself is such a big step in multimodal reasoning. Amazing. And thirdly, Google has launched a developer environment called Anti-Gravity. Oliver, this is something for you guys over there, which is basically a toolkit for building your own AI agents.
Wow.
So this is I think Google is turning AI from a destination like a chatbot into that stuff that we call the infrastructure layer. And that puts pressure on every other platform, from TikTok and YouTube to Spotify and even news publishers in my book. So I think Gemini is going to be something to watch, and I think we'll all be using it. Even if we don't know we're using it, we'll be using it. And I think its creator relationships, or indeed deeply personalized experience, will fall out of that. So I think it's a fantastic launch. I think that's the reason why everyone's sort of up going, oh, this is interesting. But solid stuff. DeepMind is just an amazing organization.
I will add to this, which is another angle to the launch of Gemini 3. They're using their own chips, which was a huge thing. So not only have they launched an incredible model, very powerful, that everybody says is finally the Google answer to larger LLMs, large LLMs, but they're doing this on their own chips. Now, you have to remember, NVIDIA controls 90% of the GPU market at the moment. And suddenly here comes one of the major players not using NVIDIA's chips at all, and having capabilities that surpass rivals like OpenAI. So the result has been a pretty sharp decline in NVIDIA's stock. So I hope, Oliver, that you're managing your stock carefully. But they've lost, I think, is it 7%? But just on the basis of Google's launch of Gemini 3. Now I'm sure they will recover, and they still are a hugely dominant player. So I'm not that worried about them. But that was a big part of the sort of, oh my God, the gasp at the launch of Gemini was that not only is it an incredibly powerful system, but it's on a whole new Google-owned chip.
Wow. Goodness me. Well, that is one to keep an eye on. Thank you very much. Brilliant analysis as ever. That was In the News. And now we move on, and it's Podmojis. It's neck and neck in the overall series for Podmoji dominance between Maureen and Claire. So this is potentially an incredibly important session of this game. So we talk about something media. Maureen and Claire both put a Podmoji together. I score it. And we're going to start off with something which looks absolutely ridiculous. Maureen, I'll come to you, I think. The iPhone sock. What the hell, man?
So the Apple has just launched what is actually called the iPhone Pocket, but the world has instantaneously labelled it as the iPhone Sock, and people are calling it a $230 for a cutout sock, or a cut-up sock, I should say. I mean, it's absolutely wonderful. And they're comparing it to, and I think the best meme so far has been Sacha Baron Cohen's Borat mankini, and the same colour as well. So it's quite nostalgic. I mean, do we all remember the iPod socks that we all used and put our iPod in? If you don't, well, whoops, I used to have one. But now, but these iPhone, I mean, $230 is ridiculous. So they're being sold with an extraordinarily high price tag, a luxury price tag. I think it's slightly weird. I think there's a revolt against this to say, why in Hades would I go out and buy a Pocket which looks like a sock that my cat has just sort of gnawed through? It's pretty awful. But actually, and I'm coming up with my Podmoji, actually, I think this is potentially probably clever marketing, and maybe Apple wanted this to be out there as a silly thing just to get some publicity, but then that's a bit of a stretch socket. So my Podmoji is oh my goodness,
oh, that's a good one. It's a very visual one as well.
Nice preparation. Let me just score that one. Excellent. My review of this product, just dreadful. Anyway, over to you, Claire.
I think there is a little bit of Apple trying to remind everybody that they're a design company and not different from Samsung, and creating a story. I agree with you, Maureen. I think that some of this is a PR play. They must have known that this was going to be a reaction. In fact, the New York Times, I think the article was, the Apple is basically trolling us with this sock, but it did get into the conversation. It reminded everyone of Apple's, history of clever design and colors. Remember the iMacs with their colored backgrounds, etc. When a lot of the conversation has been on tech. I think it's a nice way of doing something different. So I thought it was quite funny. My Podmoji is cute.
Oh, yep, the old cute hands there. Very good. Yes, good. Excellent. We'll score that one. No, that's good. I think the Emperor has no clothes, but whatever. Let's move on. Claire, let's stay with you. And, yes, the TikTok shop becomes a monster. And tell us the factoid with regards how big it is.
TikTok shop achieved $19 billion in gross merchandise value in Q3 2025. And that's against eBay's, for the same period, eBay achieved 20 billion. So basically the same size. So TikTok, from nowhere, TikTok shop, we're not talking about advertising, we're talking about people buying stuff on TikTok. TikTok is suddenly as big as eBay, which has been around obviously forever. So people are talking about this. I'm very surprised, I think, because especially for the demographic of people who comment on this sort of story, it seems completely insane to buy stuff on TikTok, but clearly a lot of people do. I think it also reflects the fact that eBay has had relatively limited growth over the last few years. So they're not shrinking, but they're definitely not growing as fast, whereas TikTok is exploding. What's my emoji on this? Whoa! Now this time I'm going with the O. And it's really important, I think, for all of us to remember that TikTok is a shopping platform. I think we just tend not to remember that. In fact, Spotify has been trying this. We're going back to Spotify. Spotify's been trying to add. This is the one thing they haven't quite managed to do, to add merchandise and ticket sales and everything on their platform. Because that's clearly an incredibly successful new business line. Although, it's important to remember that the ad revenues for TikTok are about 33 billion. So although shopping is a very significant part of their revenue mix, it's still not the biggest one.
That's an absolute shocker. Yeah, good emoji. You didn't use a prop. Might have to mark you down for that, but interesting. Maureen.
Oh my God, the pressure.
I'm going to send one to Claire. I'm sending you this one to Claire.
Yes, please.
There we go.
We should have the whole alphabet.
We should, yeah. My take here, very short. I think eBay now has turned into a car boot sale business, and TikTok Shop now is that impulse buy that you make while laughing at a cat video. And so I think when I saw the numbers, I thought they were enormous.
Oh, another letter! Blimey! Where did you get these? Off eBay?
Exactly. Yeah.
Ironically, an ironic purchase. I think it might be upside down, but it's still
it is.
Isn't the bottom bit? There you go. Oh, it's New Times Roman. It's got a lovely serif on it.
Yeah.
Quite a large serif. So that's very nice.
An M as well.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And a W, perhaps.
Monstrous.
And a 3. Yeah, no, golly, you're absolutely killing it. That's many points.
Oh my goodness, gosh, my pressure is on me for the last one.
Yeah, the last one. Goodness me. Well, this is it. So we'll stay with Maureen though. I think actually. So this is the story is producers unite. It probably needs some explanation, but it certainly needs a podmoji. Maureen.
Well, in Hollywood, you've got writers who get together. You've got directors who get together. In the UK, you have similarly. But the producers never got together and they didn't form a guild. And so now they're saying, hey, we want a guild. And so they're setting up a guild. And so we say, well, good for you and about time too. So my podmoji is
Oh, she's only got 2 letters. Excellent preparation, but slightly different fonts. I think those 2 letters. I think one's Arial, one's New Times Roman, but OE. I think a small number of points. Okay, Claire.
Yeah, I mean, they have a guild, the BGA. They've had a guild for a bit, but what they're creating here is a slightly different thing. A bunch of them has gone and formed a group called Producers United. This is in the US. Basically, they think people are laughing at them all the time and not taking them seriously. And actually, they do a lot of work, which is true. I have a lot of time for producers. They work very, very hard. And it's true that they've become a little bit of the butt of the joke and not getting necessarily the credit that they deserve, because without producers there would be no movies or TV shows. That's 100% true. But so they're feeling a little bit under the weather, and that they're not being taken seriously enough. So they've united. I think it's kind of cute, but also more seriously, I think shows how high tensions are running in Hollywood at the moment, and how people are just trying to figure out what the future will look like. And this is just one example. But they did manage to get the cover of Variety, and the title is "The Bucks Stop Here." The Bucks stop here, while Hollywood biggest producers are mad as hell, which I found was a bit extreme. But you know what? Good for them. And so my emoji is, fist raised.
Oh, fist in there, yeah. Revolutions, workers unite, kind of thing. Oh, no, very good. Yes, it's a great recovery. Yeah,
I feel like that's a good recovery. Yeah,
that's very solid. Very solid. Yeah. So, that's good. All right, now I didn't know what that story meant, but thanks for explaining. Well, I just don't get the points. Yes, it's a draw this week actually. So 1 point each. So it's 1-1. It's a 1-1 draw. Congratulations, that's great work.
It sounds like a football score, a soccer score, as the Americans would say.
Yeah, soccer. But by the way, that's not the Americans' fault. We called it soccer first because there were so many versions of football. So actually, people go, "Oh, it's football, not soccer." But we coined the phrase "soccer" as a association football. So a sort of association football as opposed to rugby football, rugby league football, and indeed American football. So it's our fault. It's the Brits' fault. Association football / soccer, which is what it was known as as late as the 70s. So there we go. I got a factoid 2. That gives me 1 point. So we are all a draw. So it's still head-to-head, everything in it for the season title-winning Podmoji champion. Could be either. We are at the end. Oh, by the way, I forgot to say, if you're interested in Spotify and basically what else do you need to know after Maureen and Claire I've given you that amazing deep dive, is that drama, The Playlist. You must know about that. It's a Swedish drama called The Playlist, and it tells the story of the rise of Spotify. Slightly dramatised, but it's quite funny. I think it's Swedish with English dubbing, but I watched that 6-parter. The Playlist, available on
you, Oliver.
God knows what platform.
Oh, you should have done the deep dive.
Well,
When you fact checking us,
I know
you were
things.
going like, "Oh, that's not true. I don't remember it. It wasn't in a movie."
Yeah, I'm a white middle class man in his 50s. I know things and love talking about them, Anyway, that would be a great title for a podcast. I know things. We are at the end of an epic. I really loved the deep dive. It was excellent. Congrats. I loved all of it as ever, and always a pleasure talking to you. But we, like all good things, have to end. But we'll be back with another. But for now, bye-bye, Maureen.
Goodbye, Oliver. Goodbye, Claire. Goodbye, everyone.
And goodbye, Claire.
Goodbye, Oliver. Goodbye, Maureen. Goodbye, everyone.
Everyone is our growing bunch of listeners. God bless you all, whether on Spotify or another platform. But until the next one, bye-bye.